Welcome, everyone, back to another episode of Beyond the Scoreboard. We're really fortunate today to be joined by Paul O'Connor, who's in corporate citizenship at ESPN, and get a chance today to talk about, a few different areas that are going on that are really big in the sports space right now. The different dynamics of how youth sports are growing, and the role that ESPN is actually playing right now in an initiative called Take Back Sports. So we're really excited to dive in with Paul and talk more about that initiative and more about the role that he plays at ESPN in this corporate citizenship department. So Paul, welcome to Beyond the Scoreboard. Great to have you here.
Appreciate it, guys. Hi, Cody. Hi, Amy. Thanks for having me. Excited to
Paul.
talk. Got my coffee. We're talking youth sports. I mean, it's nothing better.
Yeah. Well, let's dive right in, Paul. Tell us about your role. Tell us a little bit about your background. One of the things that we always find so interesting is like everyone's path into sports is always so different. And sports being like, such a big, broad term now, especially as, more money's coming into sports. There's a lot of different roles and a lot of different paths in which people get into this industry. So I'd love to learn a little bit about your path, Paul.
Well, to everyone listening, this will be the most boring part of the interview. So if you want to skip to, 5 minutes in to when we talk about Take Back Sports, that's great. If you're still listening, my path was not linear at all. If I could get on my soapbox for anyone that's 16 to 24 right now is don't expect it to be linear and almost embrace the fact that particularly in 2025 and beyond, it's not going to be this nice little straight line that goes left and right up the steps. I come from a basketball-obsessed family. My father was a college basketball coach. My uncle was a college basketball coach. I was given a ball when I was, probably 6 months old, and I did the opposite of what we are now preaching. I played one sport basically my whole life. You can't see, but I'm 5'11" and probably a $180. So my basketball tenure had a pretty low ceiling. And I realized that at a pretty young age. And so when you can't play, you coach, you do the next best thing. So I followed in my dad's footsteps and knew I wanted to do two things in college: major in sports business and coach. And so went to Ohio University, has the best, I'm required to say this, the best sports business major in the country. And I worked with the basketball team. And fell in love with coaching, fell in love with the process, fell in love with practice and everything. And so that's how I got my start into sports. And that's what I wanted to do my entire career. I was one of those kind of easy case studies of a student where I walked on campus and was like, nope, this is it. This is what I want to do. I don't really need to go to the fairs or the career stuff. Like I beelined towards coaching. Fast forward. I went to a couple different stops. I was at Providence College for 2 years. I was at Central Connecticut State, just right down the road here from Bristol, and then to Atlanta and coached at Kennesaw State. And one of the things they don't tell you about coaching is, head coaches get fired a lot. And so I experienced my first, I was an assistant at Kennesaw, and our head coach got let go, which really means everyone gets let go. And I was 25 years old. I had reached everything I wanted to do. I was like, oh man, this is it. I just want to be an assistant coach. And I had this first kind of realization of this really isn't in my hands all that much, not only from, an employment point of view from the head coach, but also from, my entire life is going to be staked on the decisions of 18 to 22-year-olds. And so anyway, a much longer story short, I ended up getting out. Worked for an organization up in New York City called Kids in the Game. It's a sport-based youth development organization that focused on sports programs all throughout New York City. And then a much longer story short, I had an opportunity to join ESPN earlier this year. I joined in February. And the corporate citizenship team oversees a ton here. We oversee the partnership with the V Foundation. We work with the ESPYs and the Sports Humanitarian Awards. We obviously are running Take Back Sports. Anything kind of philanthropic with ESPN, our team oversees. That is a very long-winded answer. Everyone should fast forward right here and the podcast will start.
Actually, Paul, I think it's probably going to be fascinating to a lot of that demographic you're talking about, the kids in school right now who are trying to figure out how to get into this. Or I think that the folks that are kind of mid-career looking to get into this ecosystem that is just getting infused with so much cash right now. There is so much opportunity. And I think one of the things that we hear a lot, and so I spent a couple years at Boston College on the softball coaching staff. And one of the things that we talked with the student athletes about all the time is like, well, what comes after softball, right? Like being able to plan that life for yourself after your that last at bat. Graduation day happens, is like, well, what now? So I think hearing and reinforcing this path that it's not linear, right? That you follow the passion. So it's great. That's what I love about your story, Paul. You follow the passion, and somehow you find yourself in a good spot when you're really following what you want. But obviously, you put in the work, and I'm sure still a student of what you're doing.
For sure. No, yeah, I would say the only thing I would add to that is, particularly with those college age students, is, we're somewhat obsessed with networking above. We're obsessed with you got to talk to the VP. You got to get time with the C-level person, and that's important and great, and you should strive for that. Definitely not saying don't do that. However, everyone on your team and in your current grade is going to be that person. And so just network with where you're at. Be the best of friends with, like you said, the catcher or the pitcher or the power forward or the point guard. Just be friends with who you're at. They're all going to go places, and those people are way more likely to be not only be able, but be willing to help you versus the president of the company that you got coffee with for 15 minutes 3 years ago, right? Like there's only so much they can do. So I don't know how we got on that, but I would just recommend that.
Paul.
It's so important. It's so important.
Yeah, no, it sounds like almost a reflection of, kind of our instant gratification society, right? Like you got to put the work in, right? You got to have tangible skills. I think more than any other environment I've been in, sports and the relationship factor of being successful in this industry has so much to do with the authentic relationships that you build and not the transactional ones. Amy and I in our previous careers spent a lot of time, kind of that DC environment where things can be very transactional, where it's, who's scratching who's back and, that type of thing. Whereas it's been really refreshing, kind of moving into this sports industry where you just meet so many cool people that are genuinely, working hard and genuinely trying to, excel in their career, but they're not transactional as much. I found that, Amy, I don't know if that's been what you've been seeing as well, because over the last 6 months, we've talked with so many people, and everyone has been so open and so, I don't know, just accommodating, to what we're building, and including you, Paul, right? Like I think we met each other on LinkedIn. Actually, I don't even remember how we met each other, and it's just one of those things, right? Where I feel like you just, you vibe with someone and you realize that there's a lot of commonality, and you can just have, good relationships and good conversations with people.
Yep.
It's so true. And I think, Cody, to your point also, the conversation that we had last week with Mo Fitzgerald and Brad Cole, associate head coach at UVM men's soccer, he was talking a lot about that the player-coach relationship is one of those most important things that you can develop, but not on necessarily a I'm here and the coach is here level, but talking to each other as how are we each learning from each other? That's an element of sports that I think is transferable into everything else in life that comes afterwards.
Yeah. There's a good old saying, like the players are never going to care how much you know until they know how much you care. Right. And so, yes, you could be the best tactician or the best X's and O's coach out there. But if you're not, what else is there besides the relationship?
That's
right.
it.
Like you're not going to win. That's for sure. Right. Like you're not, if it's a transactional relationship, that's not built on solid ground. And so, again, there's a whole nother tangent around like college athletics and NIL and all of that and like where that's going. But the ones that will win long term are building programs and teams and player relationships on that long term decision, which goes back to your original point, Cody, around like, well, what happens when the ball stops bouncing? Because it does stop bouncing for everyone, Michael Jordan included. And so what's next?
Yeah. I love the conversations that are going on in sports right now that are this. And I think there's more of them that are going on, which I'm so grateful for, about sports being the vehicle and not the end goal, where it occupies such an interesting space in our society because it is this youth development tool. but it's also big business. And it's both of those at the same time. And I think it's safe to say that as a society, we have gone too far over to the business side, and we need to get back to this thing as a tool, as a tool of teaching, as a tool of how to turn little humans into good big humans. And so I'd love to take this as the opportunity to dive into work y'all are doing now in this initiative that you've launched, about taking back sports. What does that mean, Paul? Like what are the big things that you're trying to accomplish in taking back sports?
Yeah, for sure. So just a little context and background before we dive into the specifics. ESPN has long been invested in the youth sports space, right? So whether that's with our former campaign with Kobe Bryant and Don't Retire Kid, or with our nonprofit investments, I'd say the big difference over the past campaigns or past years between then and now with Take Back Sports is we have IP. We have a logo, we have a website, and we have 3 incredibly powerful words, which is powered by Disney. And that opens up a suite of resources to help with messaging and overall impact. We have parent and coach resources. Like I said, we have the website, which is takebacksports.org. And we're working together with, the best in class youth sports organizations across the country to invest in the programming that we believe is going to take it back, right? We've also onboarded 20 plus athletes where we're helping tell and amplify their youth sports journey and how that relays back into our 4 pillars. And so the 4 pillars of Take Back Sports are, first and foremost, prioritizing fun. The number one reason kids play sports is it's fun. The number one reason kids quit sports, it's no longer fun. And winning, if there are coaches listening, winning was number 48 when the kids were surveyed. It was number 48. It's not even in the realm of conversation of what is important to kids when they play. So prioritizing fun. Second is community rec leagues. There was a stat that came out post-COVID that about 3 in 10 local rec leagues closed. And so that's a big issue. And so we want to make sure that we're investing in that space so that you don't feel the need. Travel's not all bad. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is it shouldn't be the only option, and you shouldn't feel peer pressure from your local town and your local coaches to go play in that league. You don't need to play if you live in Atlanta, to go to Florida to play in a 3rd grade softball tournament. You just don't need to do that. There's plenty of time to do that in upper, middle, and high school. Go do that then. Third is training coaches. So we have a huge partnership with Positive Coaching Alliance, and they have been fantastic about making sure that we have all the available resource and training for those said coaches. And we are believers in volunteerism. We want parents to volunteer. We just want to make sure that, they have the training that they need to be the best coach they can be. And then the 4th one is multi-sport play. So again, joked about it when I started. I think I played baseball, soccer, basketball until like 4th grade. And then I just was like, hey, I just want to play basketball, right? This is all I want to do. And so I played one sport, but multi-sport, right? All of the data, all of the research shows that it decreases burnout, it decreases injury, and it makes you better at whatever sport. Once you do decide to choose one, if you do, it makes you a better athlete. And so our focus should be building the athlete, not building the individual specific sport player, if that makes sense.
I've got lots of questions. Because there's so many interesting places to dive in. So maybe the first one, the name, Take Back Sports. It's that verb, which I love, right? Like to be able to take something back. Who are we taking this back from?
Yeah.
Who
What's
are those
the adversary?
interests? Yeah.
Yep. I think we're taking it back from a system that has prioritized profit over well-being, has prioritized specialization over multi-sport, and it has prioritized winning over fun. That's who we are taking it back from. And just to be clear, ESPN's, we are not the on-the-ground practitioners, right? But we can invest in those practitioners. We can storytell around those programs, and we can market with our athletes and with our leagues and with our teams. Look, if the best people, right, go listen to any Pure Athlete podcast, go listen to any Youth Inc. podcast. They are screaming it from the rooftops, everything we're trying to say. Play multiple sports. Don't specialize too early. Have fun be the priority for as long as possible. Because I think, one, we just fundamentally as a society, and Cody, you said it like the pendulum, we just lost the plot of why we're doing this. right? If your result is that your kid plays in college, that's fantastic, but it shouldn't be why you're doing it, right?
Yes.
To me,
That's it.
that single
Yes.
fallacy,
That's
that
it.
one pipe dream, I think, because I mean, I'm 46, and I think my generation, I think that's when it kind of, that fallacy started, right? Because it was that era of, oh, if I get my kid to play D1, they have a scholarship, right? They have upward mobility. And we've taken that, you know, the American dream, encapsulated in youth sports, and we've taken that and we've commoditized it, right? We've used that insecurity that a parent has, and we've turned it into this to yes, the profit over fun issue. But that one single fallacy, I think, catapulted this whole thing. It was like the seed that got watered, but it shouldn't have been watered. It got fertilized with some shit that shouldn't have, right? And turned in.
Yeah. And to your point, if that was what the system was producing, meaning if the youth sports ecosystem produced 50% got to college, then I could actually understand the rationale of like, no, this is the point, because we got a coin flip chance of getting a scholarship and getting a free college degree. It's 6%.
Yeah.
6% of high school athletes go on to play at college at any level, and only about 2%, give or take, of high school athletes get a scholarship of any kind, partial or full. Now, sometimes I think parents hear that and they think, well, that's for the other. That's not for me. That statistic's not for me. But again, if we can just reframe why we're putting little Paul in T-ball, or little Paul in YMCA basketball, or little Paul in Boys and Girls Club after school programming, it's so that he has fun. We know the benefit. The benefits are so clear around healthier outcomes, mentally, physically, emotionally. The data is all there. Then you learn how to be a good teammate. Then you learn how to build resilience, how to deal with failure, how to practice, how to wake up early, discipline. Everything's there. This is all research backed, and somehow we're just keep going against the grain here. Listen, that's a whole nother episode. Like, why is this happening, and the psychology behind it, and all of that, right? And so again, to attempt to put a bow on what we're trying to do is invest in the practitioners on the ground that are doing, executing against our 4 pillars, and then storytell. ESPN, we're the best storytellers in sports, period. And we need to continue to do that through our teams, leagues, partners, and athletes to make sure that we're getting to the parents. And again, this is not a preaching to the parent. Every parent wants what's best for their kid. And they are just in a system that has not provided enough alternative options. So yes, parents are the consumer. And so they ultimately will decide what the market provides. But there also needs to be investment, Cody, to your point, on the other end of the spectrum. Instead of elite travel, which we have solved. It's solved. There are options for elite travel. Pick your sport. Now there needs to be options for the on ramp to those teams. So play locally.
Yeah.
Play locally, play in your town, your county, your state, easily up until middle school. You're not going to fall behind. You're not a bad parent. We just need to change that narrative, and that's what we're trying.
It puts a lot of undue pressure on the kids at such a young age to figure out what they're going to like, what they're going to want to do 10 years in the future. I think so. My daughter is in high school right now. She was in gymnastics for fun for many, many years when she was younger. And it got to the point, I think, around 4th or 5th grade. And they're like, if you want to make it to the next level, you have to commit to being in the gym between 12 and 15 hours a week. And she's like, I don't want to do that. I want to do gymnastics. I love this, but I'm not giving up that much of my time. And so the option was either she gave up her time and didn't, sacrifice something, or she quit. And she decided to quit. And it was like, I was so proud as a mom in that moment for her saying, yeah, I love this, but I'm not going D1 with it. I'm not going to be competing in the Olympics with it. I want to have fun, and I would rather choose to play something else that's going to allow me to do that. I don't know how many kids feel like they have that ability to say no at that point if there is a parent continually urging them. And it's back to your point. It's because that's the system, because that's the falsehood that everybody's been told is no, they've got to go, they've got to specialize, they've got to go hard. So there are so many kids in middle school with, ACL tears because they're just being pushed so far beyond their physical limits. It's kind of
Yeah, and
ridiculous.
how great would it be for there have had been an option for your daughter to say, oh, I'm not going to do that, but I am going to stay in the 4 to 5 hour a week
Yes.
program. I'm going to stay here.
And she
And
would have
that's-
done it in a heartbeat.
Yep.
Yeah,
And then
it's-
who knows what happens after that, but at least she's in it.
Yep.
She's in it.
Well, so I'll take the perspective of my entrepreneurial educator hat. It kind of pisses me off too that there's a business owner out there who
Yeah.
didn't look at this and say, this is an opportunity for me.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the piece that I think we dance around sometimes when these conversations happen, is that, yes, there's money to be made. Capitalism is happening in this industry, but we can
It
focus
needs to happen on that side of the aisle.
Yes.
Yeah, we can invest money in these things and we can make money, and there's nothing wrong with that. But giving your daughter the opportunity to do something she loves and is enjoying, is having fun with, and getting so much benefit from, there's nothing wrong with making money off of that, because you as a parent would have happily, I'm
Sure
assuming,
would. I would have.
right, said, hey, if you want to do this 5 hours a week, a couple hours a day, like, dope, let's go sign you up, right? But like, someone missed that opportunity, and that's where I get frustrated, because when I see the amount of venture capital coming into this, it is not going after that market that says just participate, or just be here, show up. Sports is the vehicle, not the end goal. And that's where I get so frustrated, because there is money to be made.
Yeah.
Maybe not the scale that, and the returns.
It's going to be very interesting to see, because again, this is Paul speaking from, I've coached at the youth level, the high school level, and the college level. The elite market has long been oversaturated for 5+ years. I can't tell you how many basketball programs have the word elite in their name, right? Like, it's just the most oversaturated market there is. If we simply treated this as any other industry, you would think the logic would go, it's a lot of actual numbers on this side, way more quantity on the rec side. And it would be in our best interest to make that as high quality as we can. And again, going back to just on behalf of the parents, right? This is a system that has not made it easy for them. If all of the best resources and the best coaches and the best jerseys and the best travel and along the line are over here, and your other option is a poorly run, disorganized, not well coached local program, and this is a hypothetical, then what are we telling our parents, right? And so if the choices in the next 5 years become equal coaching, equal jerseys, equal opportunity, equal access to gym or field and all high quality, whether it's turf or new, whatever it is, then the parents can make a very informed, educated decision for their kids. And it actually takes a lot of the pressure off, because they're saying, all right, at least we're still, look, Johnny and Julie and Paul, they're getting the quality. And I'm saving money, right? Like, we know that the average parent spent over $1,000 last year on their child's primary sport. That's insane. So if we just need to make sure that the local rec league, team, whatever it is, program is of the highest quality, so that parents have more choices.
How this plays out from the business dynamic, I think, is going to be very telling of the infrastructure that's built. So I had a chance to meet Kevin Martinez back in the spring when y'all were launching this. He spoke at the GW's Sports Philanthropy. So I went through that program in the spring, and he was speaking to that group. And he brought up a really interesting dynamic that I didn't really think about, but it made so much sense once he said it, which is that from a business perspective, ESPN has a vested interest in keeping kids involved in sports, because kids who participate in sports become sports fans, right? Become sports consumers. And if we're not creating those, we've got a downstream issue for the bigger sports ecosystem, and not having consumers, which like right now, when I look at the amount of money coming into sports, especially around the development of new leagues, new sports, we are saying to society that, like, this is going to be our main form of entertainment in the future, because we are developing all of this IP, all of this content, all of this things that we need consumers for. So what y'all are trying to solve is actually the supply side of consumers as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I never thought about it in that context, but it's it's such an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, and Kevin would say, everything the corporate citizenship team does is aligned to our bottom line and our goals, our business goals. And so, Take Back Sports is a part of ESPN's audience expansion priority. And we know our research has shown that youth who play sports are 14 times more likely to become a crazy Patriot fan, like myself, right? And so what does that mean down the line, to your point, Cody, is, okay, it all starts with positive youth sports experience, period. Hard stop. Then, yeah, okay, whatever sport you play, you're going to fall in love with the player, you're going to fall in love with the team, you're going to fall in love with the coach, you're going to follow that team. And what does that mean for us? You're watching more sports. So it's undoubtedly tied to the success and future of ESPN, comma, and every single team and every single league, every single player, and every single advertiser, right? This is not just an ESPN thing. Right? This is across the board. If you have any ownership stake or you are part of the sports industry at all, you should be ringing the alarm that kids are dropping out of youth sports. Plus, they don't consume it like us, right? And so that's the other part of this. What it means for ESPN in the next couple of years is really critical. ESPN has long been the leader in the cultural sports moments. SportsCenter hosts, the commercials, the talent, the shows, everything. The ESPN has been the leader. What you're going to see in the next 5 to 10 years is customization, right? The three of us will not experience ESPN in the same way, and that's a good thing because of who we want to watch, our favorite teams, the platforms we like to consume it on. And so while all of this is happening at the bottom, right, the supply side of making sure that kids are having a positive youth sports experience, the higher ups are focused on where do we need to be? What platforms do we need to be on? What talent do we need? And what is the best angle for all of our storytelling? And that's going to make sure that we're continuing to lead the way there. So I don't know if that answered your original question, but it's a fascinating time to be in the media space because I know it's cliche, but like legitimately every 6 months, it feels like it's shifted. Legitimately.
Yeah. No, I think what you're highlighting, Paul, is it's just there are so many different nuances to how the sports world, the sports business, and the sports media business are shifting in real time. I mean, to your point about the customization, right? Like y'all launching the direct to consumer product, and like my sports center is
Yep.
UConn basketball, Chelsea football, it's Celtics, right? And there's individual players that I I'm watching, and that's when I'm looking on my phone. That's what it is, and it's also snippets, right? I can get through it in 4 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So that adapting has been an interesting kind of dynamic that we're putting this to, right? Because by focusing on developing that consumer at a young age, we're also having to adapt the consumption patterns as well. So multiple forces coming in, and I think y'all have a lot of these answers, and obviously it'll continue to evolve, but it's a wild time.
Yeah. It's fascinating. I just turned 36 a couple weeks ago, and so I'm out of that 18 to 35 coveted, marketed generation now, or age group, I should say. And, as things change and the quicker things change, you hear like, hey, I wish it was like this again, or I wish it could be like it was in the old days. And I get all that. I totally understand. But back to the original point of like, there's just different ways you can do it. And so whether you want to consume ESPN on our app or on linear or on social or through an influencer, you can do that, right? And that's where, again, ESPN has been ahead of the curve and will continue to be, is we're making sure we're prepared for that. And yeah, there's friction in that feeling of, wanting Dan Patrick and whoever, right? Like there's friction in that. And we have to live in that space, but we also need to make sure that we're prepared for what, 2030, 2035 looks like.
Well, let's talk about that influencer dynamic, Paul, because I think one of the cool things right now that we're seeing around this conversation around youth sports, and you mentioned there's a couple podcasts, there's a couple other folks that are talking about this space. Greg Olson's doing a great job at being able to highlight these things, but we're also seeing other athletes, right? who are taking the stand and saying the path that we're on right now isn't even the path that I have my kids on. Is that, we want our kids playing multiple sports. We want our kids to stay involved. I think that stat is right. The average kid retires from sports at 13. I think that's the stat.
11 to 13. Yeah, average age.
Right. So like that's the age in which. So one of the interesting things I saw recently with the the Take Back Sports initiative is y'all bringing in athletes now to kind of create their own kind of vignettes around this. What was that process like? Like, was this an easy thing to get these athletes to do? Was it a lot of planning? I want to get a little bit of the minutia because I just think it's so interesting because we are seeing that athlete influencer in this particular space around youth sports being much more relevant now.
Let me first start. This happened well before me, and credit goes to Kevin, our entire team, and specifically Jen Paulette, who runs Take Back Sports on our team. They approached Steph Curry first and, essentially asked him to take the torch from what we were doing with Kobe Bryant. And so this happened before I got here, and I can't say enough about how Steph has been as a person, as a partner, as a leader, how incredible the work he's doing with Eat, Learn, Play, and how fantastic Under Armour has been. All three of those partners and Steph and Aisha have been fantastic. And so when you start Take Back Sports with the best shooter of all time, hard stop, and then you can feel free to argue where he lands in the top 10 of all time, that certainly helps call other athletes. Let's put it that way. Then the minutia of your question, it literally was different for every athlete. And again, this credit all goes to Jen and Kevin. It sometimes was agents. It sometimes was brands. It sometimes was direct outreach. It sometimes was the teams. Sometimes it was the leagues saying, hey, we'd like to get involved with this player. Can you put us in touch? And I can say all of them, no matter who we dealt with, have been fantastic because this is such a universal agreed upon. This goes back to the point, like all these athletes, they look at the 4 pillars and they're like, oh yeah, check. Yep, got it. I'm in. In a couple weeks, we're going to, I can't say the person yet, but in a couple weeks, we have one of the best tennis players joining the campaign. And when they read the one-pager and got familiar with particularly the multi-sport, they were like, oh yeah, I didn't even want to play tennis. Tennis wasn't even my first love. And it's like, you're one of the best tennis players ever right now. And that's your answer. And so the athletes have been fantastic. We span across, 7 different sports, and this is only going to continue, right? So we're going to have another batch of athletes in 2026. And our goal is to amplify their youth sports journey, their messaging, and how important it is to play multiple sports and have a positive coach and make sure that your parent, why was it so important that your parents didn't push you too early? All those things, right? That's the story we're trying to tell.
So thinking about, you've got all these POVs, right, from the athletes. Take Back Sports as a program also works with a lot of nonprofit organizations, right? I was able to talk to Gia Fruscione. She's the founder of Let Her Play, which I know just received some funding from ESPN Take Back Sports. One of the questions I guess I have is, how are you leveraging sort of these on-the-ground initiatives to help support this mission? ESPN obviously doesn't have this frontline perspective in it. You guys have to work with organizations that are there. It's such a focused investment in them. And how do you see them continuing to sustain the work that they're doing through this program year over year over year?
So the first part of then, shout out to Let Her Play and Gia and all of the other Innovation Challenge grantee winners. We wanted to approach this traditionally. Our team has given out 6-figure, large-scale investments in national-based nonprofits that can provide a lot of reach and a lot of impact, right? So Special Olympics, Women's Sports Foundation, Boys and Girls Club. We're talking multiple sites, multiple states, thousands of kids. And that is fantastic and great, and we are going to continue to do that. On the other hand, ESPN didn't always have the opportunity to invest in the 250,000 nonprofit in California that runs 7 girls soccer teams, right? Just as a random example. And so when we started Take Back Sports, we wanted to look at and identify some ways that we could do that. And so we launched the Take Back Sports Innovation Challenge. We launched that at Project Play earlier in the year. Really what that was about was two things. One, making sure that we can invest in a different type of nonprofit that traditionally we haven't. And two, it was $10,000 per org, right? So not life-altering or programmatic-altering dollars, but can this be a seed to do something that is on your whiteboard and it's been on the whiteboard for 2 years and you just didn't have the dollars to do it? And how can we be innovative in creating programs around our 4 pillars? And so that's really what the Innovation Challenge was about. The second part of your question, which as a former fundraiser, I could talk about this forever, but it's so important that organizations think long-term, period, long-term impact, long-term scale, and long-term patience. Somehow we've gotten to a point in society where we expect nonprofits to solve everything in a grant cycle. It's not how it works. So taking that long-term view is very important. And two, not capping, again, this is my fundraiser life and brain talking, but not capping overhead, right? And so many times the funders mean well and they need their ROI. Everyone has to answer to someone, hey, you gave this organization X amount of dollars, what do we do? And the funders don't want to hear, well, 30% of that, 40% of it went to overhead. However, none of the programming gets done if we don't have the overhead and the people and the scale and the capacity and the lights need to be on, right? And so I think, again, that's like in the weeds around like how funders can think about this. But if you're taking a long-term view, then part of the overhead doesn't matter as much. If you're thinking in quarter by quarter or semi-annually or a traditional annual grant cycle, then yes, that's part of the issue with some of the funding. So I don't know if that's the angle part of the question, but happy to keep talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I think it's really interesting, the pivot from going after these bigger national orgs to the smaller ones, like Let Her Play or anything that's more grassroots. Those are, I feel like, the community-based ones. Not that some of the national ones aren't, but I think it's a great pivot to be able to get money into some of these smaller programs that $10,000, you're right, it may not make the most programmatic difference, right off the bat, but it is that jumpstart that they need in order to be able to really fulfill their mission. And there's some pretty incredible missions out there from some of these smaller orgs.
Well, and I'll say the thing that may be a little bit more controversial, which is like the larger orgs, they have bureaucracy. And it's steering the cruise ship, right? Like the smaller orgs that can innovate on the ground quickly. And to your point, Paul, have something on their whiteboard they've been wanting to do, but it's a nonprofit. So the budgetary restraints are there. Like they need to go hire a person or they need, to get a piece of technology. There's something that is preventing them from doing that. They've got a lot more agility. I do like that model of finding the innovative actors on the ground that aren't entrenched in the way it's been done, because that's also, some of the challenges. Like, well, if we want to change, we got to stop doing the same things we've been doing if we want to see a different outcome. So I appreciate that kind of pivot that y'all made and how you're making these grants, because I do think they're impactful because it spurs on innovation, and then you can scale innovation, right? And that's where the bigger money comes in.
Yeah, right. There's no telling that one of our innovation grantees don't become, one of our more traditional grantee partners that get a bigger investment, right? That's part of the idea here.
Yeah.
And then two is how else can we help and scale the program is we tell their story and we highlight them and we introduce them to each other. So part of what we did with all of the grantees in the Innovation Challenge was we had a launch call and everyone joined and introduced themselves. And we have orgs from New York and Alabama and Indiana and California, all over the map. And there's so much value in, well, how do you do that? And how are you doing this? And what are you seeing in the donor world and all of that? And then how can we connect them to the Boys and Girls Club or Special Olympics or whoever it may be. And so there's a lot of value in that too. And we take that seriously.
That goes back full circle to what we were talking about at the beginning of this, right? With that networking, it's just like, it's the peer networking that's just as important as anything else. And you've set up an incredible system for that.
So where's this going to go, Paul? What does the future of this, what does it look like, 3 months? Well, it sounds like you'll have some big announcements coming up, and there's some more, content and media and amplification around this. But where does this this program go? Where's this initiative go? And how do y'all measure that success, right? Like when will we have taken it back?
Yep. Yeah, I think it's the no-brainer one is, we're part of the Aspen 63 by 60 committee. And so if we take that to 5 years, if you allow me to take it to 5, we want to make sure that the macro goal of getting 63% of kids in this country playing youth sports by 2030. So if we have reached that, which we believe we will, that's the first high-level goal. After that, there's going to be a ripple effect of that hits our nonprofits, that hits our ROI, that hits our KPIs, hits our audience expansion priority, right? Because right now we're hovering at about 50% of kids playing. So if 13% more kids play, 13% more kids are avid fans, are watching sports, are buying jerseys, are going to games, yada, 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 down the line of the sports industry, right? Second, we want to make sure that we are the best-in-class grant makers across the sports industry, right? So we want to be making sure we're investing in the best-in-class youth sports organization. They're creating programming focused on our 4 pillars. And then lastly, what you're going to see in the next 3 months to 18 to 24 months is storytelling, marketing, and then resources, right? So takebacksports.org, making sure parents and coaches are informed, they can network with each other, and they can go there to get anything they need. Whether they're starting, I'm a dad who's coaching my 2nd grade baseball team to, hey, I'm actually, we have a pretty good basketball team in 8th grade and I need resources for that. All of, it's going to run the gamut, right? And Positive Coaching Alliance has been fantastic in that. And so that's kind of how we see it, right? We have our North Star, as a part of the committee. And then through that, there's going to be ripple effects that if we hit that, we believe our thesis is that all the other goals will reach. That's the goal.
It's awesome. Yeah. And I think that the thing that is very encouraging and honestly very motivating is having these specific numbers. I think this is one of the things that we've seen in our career, especially working a lot in the nonprofit space, is the goalpost changes when a different
Yep.
board of directors comes in, or a different the 5-year plan gets revised and we start moving goalposts. But being a part of a bigger cohort of change makers with Aspen, and being able to be a part of that, where it's like, no, here's our goal, 63%. And we're going to shoot for that, and then these other KPIs start to cascade off of that. I think it's a great approach, data driven, obviously, and that's
Yeah,
how,
and we can't
that's how
do right.
change happens.
Yeah, we are a major player, but we're one of, right?
Yeah.
There's so many. We're not going to do this alone. It's going to take all of the nonprofits, all of the youth sports organizations, brands, leagues, teams, players, coaches. It's going to take everybody. And I think we're at a really interesting inflection point in youth sports. Obviously, from like the last 50 minutes, everything that we just talked to, and more people are talking about youth sports than ever have before. We're getting New York Times articles and podcasts popping up, right? Like everyone is seeing the issue and recognizing the problem and the long-term problems that we've talked about. And so it feels, like if you've been in this space at all for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you kind of felt like you were like just screaming into the void. And now that's not the case. People are listening, people are talking, and people are investing. And that's really exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited about the movement. I know as a company, part of what our mission is, we like to say the athletes, the teams, the sports that you love them more. And this is one of those initiatives, especially as we start to see teams, organizations, and athletes get behind things like the promotion of healthy youth sports. Like that's something that we're going to continue to amplify and partner with whomever's doing this great work, and be at that platform for amplification. Yeah, Paul, we appreciate you coming on so much, talking about this, getting into the weeds with us. There's so much we can nerd out about with so many of these things, but I think just being able to continue to see ESPN taking a leadership role in this is fantastic, and I'm curious. I'm gonna have to wait for who the tennis player is that y'all are bringing out.
We might know it by tomorrow, but I can't say.
Drop us a little note. We don't have our Woj bombs. There's not a lot of those in this sports philanthropy space, in the purpose-driven sports media space, but That sounds like one. So we can't wait to inform everybody about what's going on and help y'all amplify all the great work that's going on with you and your partners. I think the unsung heroes of these things are the folks on the ground doing the work, right? It's the nonprofits, it's the volunteer coaches, it's the volunteer board of directors at, little leagues and all of these that are often doing so much of the heavy lifting and having to, make these things. So we appreciate you giving those resources to those organizations as well. And we'll continue to amplify all the great work that y'all are doing too.
Yeah, really appreciate you guys having me. Love the conversation. And if anyone's looking for more info, you can go to our website, takebacksports.org. You can email me directly. It's just paul.o'connor@espn.com. Happy to connect with anyone and everyone doing good work in the youth sports space.
Amazing. Thank you so much for talking to us, Paul. This was awesome.
Thanks for having me.